Welcome back. Are you excited to get started with your group? I'm excited for you. In this session, we'll help you plan out your first Search for Rest small group meeting. I'll break things down into 3 sections, before, during, and after the meeting, but the bulk of our attention is going to go towards the meeting itself. Before the meeting, you want to make sure you take time to pray for the people in your group and for the meeting as a whole. I know I've said this before, but I'll continue to say it because prayer is absolutely vital to everything that we do. I also think that it's wise to set up some primary goals for the meeting. This will help you stay on track with your prayers and with facilitating your time together. For example, our goals for this week are to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves, to establish the environment of the group, to lay out our overall plan for the group, and to build a sense of anticipation for what the Lord is going to do. You also want to make a basic but flexible plan for how you want the meeting to look. Write out an outline with any introductory comments and announcements. There's going to be too much going on during the meeting itself for you to keep everything in memory. You also want to decide whether you want to have food at the first meeting. Light snacks help to make people more comfortable, but the burden of providing food can also become a distraction. Every group's different, so you'll have to discover what works best for you. If you take turns providing a snack, it can easily become a competition, so you're going to need to set some parameters. And of course, if the meeting is online, food will probably be more of a distraction than anything else. Now let's talk about the meeting itself. You'll begin with a welcome and introductions. You're going to want to provide an opportunity for small talk at the beginning of the meeting, but not too much. If your group members don't know each other, it's going to take a few weeks for them to get comfortable. Also, please remember that efficiency-minded people will likely view small talk as a waste of time. If you allow too much of it, you'll begin to lose their attention. So allow a little bit of small talk, but not a whole lot. Introduce yourself and the group title. Talk about your vision for the group as a whole. At some point, you want to share a little bit about your family, your background, anything else that you think is relevant to the group. At this point, you can either begin that process with everybody else, or you can say a prayer before you move on. At some point, you want to definitely open the meeting in prayer and kind of keep the focus on God as you take this process through. Now, when you ask them to introduce themselves, have them make personal introductions similar to your own. You can give them an opportunity to share why they joined the group or what they'd like to get out of it. Encourage them to take 3 to 5 minutes max, depending on the size of your group. You can also talk about the introduction to the Search for Rest, but beyond that, I wouldn't cover a lot of the content itself. I would save that for your next week. Now, whether you do an icebreaker activity or not is really at your discretion. It's a mixed bag. Some people love them. Others feel overwhelmed and they might be tempted not to return. You're just going to have to prayerfully seek out the best option of what you think works for your situation. Next, you're going to want to focus on creating a safe environment that is conducive for growth. One of the most important things you'll be doing at this first meeting is setting the tone. Whether you have males, females, or a combination of both in your group, creating a safe environment should be a top priority. People who are new to this type of activity can be anxious and fearful, and how this first meeting goes might determine whether they get more actively involved in church-related functions or whether they even pursue a relationship with God. You know, the truth is that even seasoned believers need a safe place to open up about their inner lives. Ours is a scary world with plenty of cruelty. People have been conditioned to avoid showing weakness or vulnerability, but healing and freedom come only as we bring our struggles into the light. So as a leader, you help to set the tone for the meetings and to establish the environment. Creating a safe environment begins with being open, vulnerable, and authentic yourself, to a degree, as far as the openness goes. You want to share enough of your personal challenges to give others the courage to bring their struggles into the light, but you don't want to overwhelm them if your issues are raw and painful. You also want to give the group time to get comfortable and to develop trust. There are always exceptions, but I found that as a general rule, people naturally begin to connect and develop trust by about the 3rd meeting. That doesn't mean they entrust each other entirely, but that's when the process kind of begins to get going. Now, your goal is not simply to instruct people or tell them how to live, but to draw them out for discussion and to empower them to minister to one another. So asking meaningful questions can be a huge help. but be careful not to put anyone on the spot this early in the process. Begin with questions that are non-threatening and go deeper as trust is built. It's also up to you to determine the ground rules for the group. So I'm going to share a few things that I might say at a first meeting. I might say, hey everybody, we're all here to learn, and group interaction is what helps that happen. We want everybody to have the opportunity to participate as they feel comfortable. We want you to have the freedom to give your opinions, but we also ask that you be sensitive to the fact that there are other people in the group, that you're not the only one here. Also, if you're new to the Bible or you're not familiar with its contents, we're not here to judge you. We're all here to learn. That's why we're here, is to learn, and everybody has to start somewhere. Don't be afraid to ask where something is located in the scriptures. I can tell you that over the years, I've certainly had my challenges in understanding the Bible or where everything is found. So it takes time for this to become something that we really lay hold of. Disagreeing with one another, and even with me, is absolutely fine, but we will not be argumentative. We will not go down that road. And we absolutely must treat one another with respect. That's non-negotiable. Please don't interrupt others to make a point. And we won't be talking about politics. I'm not saying that politics are unimportant. I'm just simply saying that they can easily distract us from what really matters in our group for what our purposes are. So we're just not going to go there. Now, if we start getting sidetracked a little too far, I'll bring us back. It's my job as a leader, so please don't be offended. We'll also take turns reading from the Bible or from the notes. If that causes you undue stress, just let me know. We won't force anything. If you need to use the restroom, it's just around the corner. Feel free to get up at any time. We'll try to keep the meetings to 90 minutes max. Sometimes the discussion might go longer. So if it does, feel free to leave. There's no guilt. There's no condemnation. You just can't always control these things. So we'll do our best to quit at that 90-minute mark. But if there's a need to go longer, we will. And you can be free to release yourself. I'll also talk about snacks. Do we want snacks at our weekly meetings? Every group, again, is different, so you're going to have to decide that. And then finally, we'll talk about confidentiality. I'll say something like, if we discuss anything of a sensitive nature, it needs to stay in this room. We've got to be able to trust one another. We've got to be able to open up. But there is an exception. And that exception is if you're sharing something that is really heavy or significant, I might need to go to our church leadership about this. Or if it involves legal issues, I might need to go to the authorities. So what I'm offering you is not absolute confidentiality, but I am telling you that we will have a high degree of trust in our group. Now, along these lines, I'll also say that if you're using an online format, you'll need to talk about whether or not you want to record the meetings. Honestly, I would encourage you not to. My reasoning is that if you're recording things, it's really going to limit people and what they're willing to say. They're not going to be as honest, and so you want to be careful about that. During this time, you also want to lay out your basic plan for the meeting, along with your expectations for those in the group. Establish what to read in the book and when to read it. Reading a chapter a day is probably going to be the best approach for this series. Encourage them to make their own peace journals, to take notes, or to highlight significant ideas that they find in the book. Provide guidance for following the peace steps if you decide to make them a priority. That's really going to depend upon your group. If you've got parents of young children, the likelihood of them following through with the peace steps is pretty small. So making it a focus might just create more of a burden for those folks. You also want to encourage them to pray for one another. And you want to encourage them to attend consistently. This is vital for building trust and for getting the full value from the group. Now I want to say just a few things about after the meeting, a few things that you can do that will help keep the momentum moving forward for your group. Number one is thank the Lord for how He's working. If you are praying in faith, you can be sure that God is answering those prayers. They may not be evident. You might not be able to see His hand at work, but He is working. And thankfulness is an expression of faith that just opens the door for God to work in even greater ways. You also want to review your goals and your plan to see how you did, to see if there are any basic changes that you need to make to the structure of the meeting. The idea is you just want to stay abreast of things and adjust as you go. You also want to be sure to follow up on any promises that you might have made during the meeting. One of the quickest ways to destroy trust is to fail to follow through on something that you tell somebody you want to do or that you will do. So if you make a promise, if you make a commitment, follow through on it. You want to surrender any burdens to God. As you deal with people and their issues come to light, their struggles come to light, it's very easy for us to begin to carry the weight of that on our own shoulders. And that's probably one of the worst things that we can do. It might sound responsible, but really it's prideful. So what we want to learn is to come to the Lord and to surrender those burdens to Him. If you've got somebody that's weighing on your heart or a need or something like that, take it to God. Spend some time in prayer, interceding for those people and surrendering them to God, knowing that He can fix the situation far better than you can. And so this is a process that is so important to leadership throughout all of our lives, is that we learn how to bring things to the Lord, we pray in faith, and we trust that He's the one that will carry those burdens, because Jesus ultimately is the Prince of Peace, and the government rests on His shoulders and His shoulders alone. Finally, you want to pray for the Lord to confirm His truth in the lives of your group members. You want to pray that He'll tear down walls, that He'll knit their hearts together. You want to pray that He'll open their eyes and teach them His ways, that He'll prepare their hearts for the next gathering. And be sure to involve your prayer team in this process. You want them to stay abreast of what's going on so that they can continue to bring things before the Lord, that your experience can truly reflect heaven visiting earth. So that's pretty much it for your first meeting prep. Hopefully you'll be off to a great start. And next time we'll talk a little bit about diving into the book itself.